If you could have any guest on Cheers, who would it be and what would you hope to discuss with them? Listen, it's Beyoncé. Hi, I'm Avery Woods, and I'm answering questions from the Confession Cube with page 6. I'm so excited right now. Now that you've entered your 30s, is there a particular life lesson you wish you could have shared with your 20-year-old self? I love that because I just turned 30 2 days ago, I think. In my head, I'm like so mature and 30, but it's fresh. If I could go back though and talk to my 20-year-old self, I would say, life is not gonna end up the way that you've planned, but everything that's meant to be is meant to be, and it's all gonna fall into place the way it's supposed to. Chill out, girl. Your friend Emily Kaiser just welcomed her second child. His name's Teddy, so cute. What advice do you have for new mothers, especially those juggling personal and professional responsibilities? I would say be patient with yourself and give yourself grace, because no matter how prepared you feel like you are, you're never prepared to be a mom, because it's so different. It's such a huge life change. Be graceful with yourself, be patient with yourself, be patient with your body, and also don't be afraid to ask for help, because it does take a village to raise kids. What's one lesson about love or self-worth that took you the longest to learn but grateful you did? I would say comparison is a thief of joy, and it was so hard for me to love my body because I was always curvy at a younger age and I just didn't look like people surrounded by me, and so it made me really insecure. And also social media is always a comparison, right? You're always comparing your life, your body, your looks to everyone that you're watching, and you'll just never be happy. You have to be confident in who you are and your own self, because I promise you might look in the mirror and not love what you see, but so many people around you do. And we're our own worst critics. Just be nice to yourself. How do you personally approach transparency when it comes to cosmetic enhancements? And do you think public figures have a responsibility to be open about it? Wow, I love that question. Here's the thing, I have always been very transparent, and I feel like that's just something that I felt was necessary in order to be honest. However, I don't feel like we should be expected to. I think anything we do in our life is our choice, whether we keep private or share. However, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because when you do share things that you've had done, then people kind of hold that against you, maybe call you fake or say, you know, your body only is the way that it is because it's fake, when, you know, you could be working out or maybe eating healthy, making lifestyle changes. So it is really hard when you're a public figure and you share those type of procedures, but I think it depends on the person's comfortability, and other people need to realize that we don't need to share what we've had done, but we chose to in order to be open. So maybe be a little less judgmental and just be kind, you know? The world should be kind. Ew, I'm like a mom preaching as a newly 30-year-old. What inspired you to create Cheers, and what do you hope listeners take away from each episode? Honestly, I just can't stop talking, and so I would do Instagram Q&As to the point where each slide was like the tip of a pencil, like so tiny, because I would have like thousands of slides, or I would get maxed out or whatever it was for 24 hours, because I would do Q&As and I wouldn't stop answering questions, and people were like, I love listening to your advice and you being so open and honest, you should start a podcast, because I would do Q&As that would last the whole day. And so that's kind of where the idea stemmed from. I feel like a lot of people in this industry, because people on the internet are so mean now, they're kind of closed off just to protect themselves, and I don't blame them at all. Whereas I'm a little bit more of an open book, so I love the fact that I talk about topics on my podcast that most people wouldn't. And although sometimes that can bring negativity, I feel like it brings a lot more positivity and it helps people, which is worth it in my eyes. Joining the Unwell network was a big move. What has the experience been like, and what's the best piece of advice you've received from Alex? Unwell is amazing, and you know, when I started the podcast, it was just me and my best friend Scott, who was a videographer for weddings, so he didn't have any production background. I had no idea what it took to host a podcast and the work that went into it, and so it was just him and I for about a year and some change, and we had a couple production companies give us offers and ask to sign with them, and we kindly passed just because they wanted us to sign over pretty much all ownership of the podcast and our IP address, and we just weren't comfortable with that because we had worked so hard. It was my baby. And to be honest with you, I made pretty much no money on the podcast for probably the first year. I loved it and it was enjoyable for me, and it was a platform that I love just opening it up and connecting with people on. So when Unwell came around, it was very obvious how involved Alex is with not only Call Her Daddy, but her entire brand and company. and how respectful she is of other females in this industry and business, because all she wants is for everyone in the Unwell network to thrive. Like, I remember having a conversation with her and her husband Matt, and they were like, we have everything. Like, we have our successful business and our beautiful home, and we just want to share that success with those around us, and like that's what fills our cup. And that to me speaks on what type of amazing human beings they are. And I would say advice I receive from Alex that I really appreciate is just, everyone goes through it. Everyone nitpicks you when you share your life and you're, you know, maybe a public figure, but all that matters is keeping a close community by you, staying true to yourself, and always taking the high road. Has there been a particular moment where you realized the true impact of your platform on followers or even yourself? Sometimes the hate always feels greater than the love, but that's really not true, because that's why I won't stop doing what I'm doing, is because the messages I'll get from moms maybe saying I helped them through postpartum, or I made them feel more confident in their postpartum body, or nurses that have told me that maybe I influenced them to leave bedside and, you know, fight for their salary or go to aesthetic nursing. That to me is everything, and that's what it means to use this platform. So I just feel like it's not about numbers, it's not about engagement, it's not about money. It's what impact are you leaving on those that choose to follow you and support your life. When you look ahead, what does love, whether romantic, familial, or self-love, look like to you in this next chapter? Honestly, just being a mom, and you know, we just moved out of the state we were in so I can be a little bit closer for work and not have to travel as much, and for me that's everything. My kids are only little once, and so when I had the opportunity to move in order to be more present with them, that to me is what's most important. I'm such a homebody. I love like my little environment in my town, and like taking my kids to local movie theaters and gelato. So that to me is love. It's just being involved with my family, my husband, my kids, and just my little small group of people, you know? What's been one of the most impactful conversations you've had on the podcast so far, and why did it resonate with you? One of the conversations that I will never forget, and I don't think it resonated with me up until recently, was my interview with one of my dearest friends, Whitney Simmons. She is an incredible fitness influencer, and she is truly one of the most beautiful humans inside and out. I feel so lucky to call her one of my close friends. She was very kind and let us do one of our first ever podcast interviews with her, and she never does podcast interviews, so I was so grateful. And she really opened up about her struggle with mental health and how it impacted her mentally when she was reading negative things about herself and what people were saying about her on the internet. I was empathetic with her, and I was so saddened by her going through that, but it wasn't until I had recent mental health struggles earlier this year that I couldn't really like truly be empathetic with her, and like it didn't really resonate with me. And so I thought back to that conversation, and I think I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life. You often speak about the realities of motherhood. What's one misconception you're passionate about debunking? That your life ends when you have kids. If I hear that one more time, it is just so not true. You will never be fully ready to have kids, right? But you have the ability to take your kids with you throughout so much of your life. Is it harder? Maybe. And does it change a lot of things and your priorities are different? Absolutely. But I feel like so much of my joy has come from having children and raising them, and also my confidence as a human and a mom has grown exponentially since becoming a mother. So having kids on your time is all that matters, but don't let people scare you into not having kids, because I promise your life does not end. I feel like my life just started when I had kids, okay? You speak with such clarity on relationships. How have your personal experiences shaped the advice you share with your audience? I kind of talked about this on my podcast the other day, and I kind of use my platform as a way to help others learn from my mistakes. I feel like, you know, I'm a human being, I'm living this life for the first time, and I've made plenty of mistakes just like everyone else, but sharing my experiences and things maybe I wish I did better or handled better, maybe those can help, you know, my followers and my listeners just by hearing my story and maybe what I wish I would have done differently. I also don't live life with regrets, even though life can be really hard and maybe you wish things didn't happen. Everything that's happened in my life is something I have learned from exponentially, and I'm forever grateful for that. So my goal when it comes to sharing that with my audience is maybe a little bit of insight of what I maybe wish I would have known earlier in my 20s. What advice would you give to aspiring creators who want to build a lasting connection with their audience, not just go viral? I think it depends on what you want to use your platform for and what you want your brand to be. It's so important to be your true authentic self, because if you are not being who you really are and you're kind of putting on a show, you will burn out so quickly. And again, this social media space has become much more of a business where you're showing face and you're going on brand trips and you're meeting the CEOs, the creators of companies, and you want that lasting relationship. So you want to be yourself both online and in person to these people. And also when you meet people, you don't want them to be like, wait, who is that person? Like, I don't even recognize them because they're a different person online. So I would say be yourself and figure out what realm you want to be in. Are you into cooking? Are you into vlogging? Are you into makeup? Are you into fashion? Kind of find your niche and then go with it. If you could have any guest on Cheers, who would it be and what would you hope to discuss with them? Listen, it's Beyoncé. I am obsessed with Beyoncé. I saw her at my first concert when I was like 6 years old, when she was part of Destiny's Child. I don't even know what I would say. I would probably just cry. Navigating family dynamics in a public space can be challenging. How do you strike a balance between authenticity and privacy? Yeah, this is really hard, especially when you are more of a lifestyle creator where you vlog and kind of show aspects of your life. In the beginning, I shared a lot more, but the more you share, the more at risk you are to criticism and maybe safety issues. And that was something I decided to just take a slight step back from when we moved, just because, you know, as the kids get older, you have to remember that everything you post on the internet is going to be there forever. And that's something I am learning the hard way. And that's okay. Again, I don't have regrets. I learned from things that have happened. And I think it's just a balance of what I want to show, what I think is true to me and my family, and letting people know that it's okay if we're not sharing every aspect of my life. I feel like it's almost expected now with social media influencers that if we're not sharing, we're lying, when sometimes we just want a little bit of privacy, and I think that's totally okay to have boundaries. That was the Confession Cube. Thank you so much, page 6. Make sure you guys follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Avery with 2 Eyes Woods, and then go listen to my podcast, Cheers with Avery Woods, which is part of the Unwell Network.